Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you the steps you need to do in order to complete lesson number 1 of your Access course. Now, the objective for this lesson is to navigate an Access database and recognize the different objects in it. So I'm going to open an Access database that I placed right here on my desktop, and we're going to navigate the database, and I'm going to show you the different objects of this database. Now, for those of you who never used Access before, this is what you're going to see when you open an Access database. So on the left side section over here, you're going to see what we call the navigation pane. So the navigation pane lists all the different objects of your database. On an Access database, you're commonly going to see tables. As you see on this database, you're going to see queries, you're going to see forms, and you're going to see reports. So I'm going to talk about these objects in a minute. But before we move on, I'm going to talk about the top section of your screen. So this section over here, it's called the ribbon. And the ribbon is organized into different tabs, as you can see over here. So you have the create, you have external data, you have database tools tab. Each one of these tabs contain different commands that you're going to be using as you work on your Access database. Okay, so now if I click on one of these tabs, I'm going to click on the Create tab. The commands on these tabs are going to be organized into different groups. So for instance, right here, I'm looking at the tables group that extends from this dividing line over here all the way to this next vertical line over here. So anything in between is contained inside the tables group. So you have the queries group, you have the forms group, etc. And once again, each one of these tabs over here will have the different commands that you're going to be using depending on the task that you're doing at the time. So like for instance, if you want to create a new table, you will click on the Create tab, and then you'll use one of these options over here to create your new table. Now, once you're working with certain objects of your database, for instance, if you're working with a table, I'm going to double click to open this table, and you're going to notice that once I open this table, then on the top section of your screen, there will be two additional tabs. So you're going to see now the fields and the table tabs. And the reason those tabs show up there, if I'm going to click on the Fields tab, is because they contain commands that are most likely going to be associated with the type of object that you're working with right now. Okay, so if I click on the Fields tab, these commands over here will help me modifying or working with my table. As soon as I close this table, which I'm going to do by right-clicking on the Table tab and selecting Close, as soon as I close the table, those two additional tabs will no longer show on the screen. Now I'm going to show you the different objects that make up this database. So I'm going to start with the Table section. You see I have 4 different tables on this database, so I'm just going to pick the Product table, TVL Product. I'm going to double-click to open it. And when I open the table, in these particular tables, I see a list over here of different products. So I can see the product ID. Each one of these products is given an ID. Then I see the name. I see the unit price, how much they sell it for, the amount, and the units. So this tells me information about the product. So remember, this is a sales database. So this it only makes sense to think that this is the product they are selling. Now, how many products they have on the list? I may be tempted to go all the way down here and look at the last ID. So the last ID over here is 34. So I may think that I have 34 products on my list. However, the place where you're going to see how many records, and I call it records, each one of these lines of information over here. Okay, so on this particular table, I can say I have 24 records. Once again, each one of the lines of information over here is a record, And each one of the columns that you see at the top is what we call a field. So fields are really what make up your tables. Each one of these fields will be of a different type based on the data that you want to store on your field. But we'll talk more about tables and fields and records on another lesson later on. Now, one thing that I want you to notice about tables is when you right click at the table name over here, you're going to see two different views. What's called the datasheet view, which I'm looking at right now, so I see the data contained on the table, but there is also the so-called design view. So if I click on design view, I'm going to see the fields that make up my table. Okay, and now each one of the fields, as I was saying before, will be of a different type based on the data that you're going to put on that field. Okay, and each one of the fields will also have what's called the field properties, which is different options that you can set for the field down here. But once again, once we get to the tables lesson, we'll talk more about it. I just wanted you to see the different type of views that you have available for your table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a right click. I'm going to switch back to datasheet view, and I'm going to leave this table open. Okay. So now I want to show you a query. Okay. So I'm going to go to my query section. I see only one, so that's the only one I can open. I'm going to double click to open it, and this one is called QRY between 3 and 5. So let me see what happens when I double click on this object over here. So now I got something kind of similar to what I was seeing with the product table. Okay, so the difference over here is that I have only 3 records. Okay, and now on these 3 records I only see the ID, I see the product name, and I see the unit price. I don't see the units and some other additional information that I was looking at the table. Okay, now if you look at the price of these products, you notice that the price goes between 3 and 5. Nothing costs more than 5, nothing costs less than 3. And that's probably why they call this query between 3 and 5. Because queries in Access are created to filter the data that you have on your tables. So this query over here is filtering the data on the product table and displaying only those products with a price between 3 and 5. Now, if you do a right click on the query tab name, which I'm going to do now, then I'm going to see that for queries we have 3 different views. We got the datasheet view that I'm in, we got a SQL view, and we have design view. I'm going to click on design view, and I'm going to let you see how a query is built. So this is a place where you can, if you want to build a query. There will be a lesson for queries later on, and I will show you how to create them, but for now I just want to show you what a query looks like in design view. Okay, so what makes this query work, it's right here on the criteria section, the fact that somebody typed between 3 and 5. Okay, if I modify my query and let's say I type between 2 and 5, and I go back to my query tab name and I right click and switch back to datasheet view, now I got more records because I created a different filter. Now instead of seeing products that cost between 3 and 5, now I see products that cost between 2 and 5. Okay, I'm gonna leave this query open, and once again later on I'm gonna show you how to create queries and how to modify them. Okay, I'm going to show you another object now. I'm going to show you a form, but before I do so, I like to close this query, so I'm going to do a right click and close. Now as I try to close it, because remember I modified the query to display prices from 2 to 5, so now they ask me if I want to save the changes, which I'm going to say no. So I keep the original version of my query, and I'm going to close this table as well. I will do the same. I will do a right click and then the close option from here. So now I'm going to open up this form, the only one I have, and this form is called the FRM products. So this form shows the products that I have on the product table. Now the purpose of creating forms or using forms in Access, forms are used for data entry. So every time you want to add new data to your table, you should create a form based on that table and then use the form to add new data. So let's say, for instance, I want to add a new product to my product list. Okay, now that my form is open, I'm going to come all the way down here. Okay, and I'm going to use the navigation buttons. There is one button over here that lets me go all the way to the end of my record set. It's going to open a new form for me so I can fill in over here the new product. So let's say I'm going to sell brown sugar, and I'm going to sell at 350 per unit. Is going to be 1 pound. So I just type all the information here. Okay, and the data will be saved as I move to another record. Okay, so I can advance to another record. I could create a new one, or I could go back, and I notice that I now have 25 records. Okay, so one more product to my list. Okay, forms also have different views. So if I right click on the form tab, right now I'm looking at the form view. If I switch to design view, then I'm going to see what the design of my form looks like, and this is the place that I will come if I need to make design changes to my form. Okay, so for now I just wanted to show you this what the form looks like. I'm gonna go back to form view, okay, and I'm gonna be taken back to record number 1. I'm gonna close my form, gonna do a right click close, and I'm gonna open up the product table again. Gonna double click here just to show you that the new item that I added using the form is going to be displayed on the product table. So once again, forms are used for data entry. You use them to feed the data on your tables. Now, I could add a new product if I wanted to, just type in the information right here on the table, but I really recommend that you get used to using forms for the purpose of data entry. Later on, when we start creating forms, you're going to notice the importance of using these forms on your Access database. So I'm going to close this table. I'm going to do a right click close, and then I'm going to show you the last object on this database, which is a report. I'm going to double click on the RPT product, and now we're looking at the report, and the reports are used to display, to show the data contains on your tables or your queries. So this particular report over here is again showing the data that you've been seeing on the product table. Okay, but once you create a report, then you can add additional information, such as you can have a nice title. You can also have on a report, you're allowed to create footers at the bottom of your report. As you can see over here, this report displays the date when it was open, and it also tells you how many pages you have on this report. So if you want to navigate to page number 2, you can go over here on the navigation buttons and then click on the next page, and now you're going to see page number 2. Okay, with this view of your report, you can click to zoom out or click to zoom in to your report. Okay, now the big difference between a report and a form, a query, and a table is that the data on a report is is read only. You can only see it, but you cannot change it. Okay, when you're looking at data on a table, you can make changes. When you're looking at data on a form, you can also make changes, as you just saw me add a new record, and you can even make changes when you're looking at data on a query. But when you open up a report, the data on the report is read only. It cannot be modified. Okay, so once again, we're gonna have another lesson later on to create reports. I like to just close this preview that I have over here, and with that we conclude our first lesson.